Jason Statham was a Hollywood legend. His name was synonymous with action-packed movies, dangerous car chases, and strong characters. In the eyes of his fans, he was a hero who kept his cool in any situation and overcame obstacles. But this story was neither a script nor a movie scene. It was the story of a real-life encounter that changed his life forever. One evening, Jason was driving to an upscale charity event outside of town. The sky had darkened and the rain had begun to drizzle. While his assistant drove, Jason sat in the back seat going over the details of the upcoming event. Wearing an expensive tuxedo, he looked as charismatic as ever. But the world outside was a far cry from the glitz and glamour of the event. As we moved away from downtown, luxury buildings gave way to empty lots, deserted streets, and deserted roads. As the car rounded a bend, something in the shadows on the side of the road caught his attention. "Wait a minute," Jason said, his voice serious and clear. "Stop the car." His assistant turned to Jason in surprise. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "There's something out there," Jason said, pointing outside. Raindrops were beating on the windshield, and apparently no one had noticed this little detail. As Jason got out of the car, the cold wind licked his face. The rain was heavy enough to make him squint. As he made his way to the side of the road, he saw a small figure lying motionless on the ground. His heart began to race. What he saw was a soaked, exhausted puppy. The puppy was nearly lost in the rocks and mud. Its small body was trembling, its tiny whimpers reaching Jason's ears. The puppy's fur was covered in mud and its hind leg was at an awkward angle. Even at first glance, it was clear that his condition was serious. Jason fell to his knees, raindrops running down his face. "Hey, little buddy," he murmured. The dog's eyes were half closed, his breathing weak and erratic. At that moment, a deep protective instinct awoke in Jason. This little creature desperately needed help. With his assistant standing at the car door watching, Jason gently picked up the dog. "Sir, we're going to be late," his assistant said. But Jason's response was clear. "This dog is more important than anything right now." Jason walked back to the car and carefully placed the puppy in the back seat. "Find the nearest vet," he said, his voice commanding and determined. The dog turned his head with a small whimper and shivered slightly as he felt Jason's hand. Jason could not take his eyes off this innocent creature. He tried to calm the dog down while he looked for a vet on the way. "I promise you, I will save you," he said. At that moment, tears filled Jason's eyes. He had faced many hardships in his life, but the plight of this defenseless puppy had touched him more deeply than he could have imagined. As the dog's faint whimper pierced the silence in the car, Jason's eyes never left the little creature. "Is there a vet nearby?" he asked his assistant. But this was a desolate country road, and the nearest town was several miles away. "I'm trying to find a place on the map, but it will take at least 20 minutes, his assistant said, her voice carrying an uneasy tone. 20 minutes might be too long for this dog," Jason said, his voice low but determined. Fear grew inside him. He put his hand lightly on the dog's shaking body and whispered, "Hang in there, buddy, we're going to save you," he whispered. As the car sped away, Jason's mind drifted back to memories of the past. As a child, the first dog his family adopted had become his best friend. This dog had supported him through difficult times and eased his childhood loneliness. This puppy reminded him of that old friend. But this time, the hero to be saved was not himself, but this little life. About half an hour later, the lights of a small town appeared on the horizon. When they reached the town, they headed for the first veterinary clinic they saw. Jason quickly got out of the car and walked inside, cradling the puppy in his arms. Raindrops ran down the shoulders of his tuxedo, and the muddy fur of the puppy in his arms stained his white shirt. But none of that mattered. Dr. Lily, the clinic veterinarian, a young woman, greeted them. "We need to do something right away," she said when she saw the dog's condition. Jason carefully placed the dog on the table and stepped back. The dog's labored breathing was heartbreaking for everyone in the room. "He has a bad fracture in his hind leg. It's also probably infected," Dr. Lily said, "but we can save him." Jason took a deep breath when he heard those words, but seeing the dog's pain made it hard for him to appear strong. "Do whatever it takes. The cost is not an issue," he said. Dr. Lily quickly assembled a team and began treating the dog. He was sedated, his wounds cleaned, and his broken leg immobilized. Jason didn't leave the doorway for a moment during the procedure. He stared through the glass, waiting for the dog to find a glimmer of hope. "When the treatment was over, Doctor?" Lily opened the door and approached Jason. "The puppy is stable. He needs to stay here for now, but he should be fine in a few days." A look of deep relief appeared on Jason's face. As he walked in to see the dog, he noticed that the little creature was breathing more regularly. That meant the world to him. Jason didn't leave the clinic that night. He sat on the couch next to him and waited for the dog to wake up. In the middle of the night, when the dog slowly opened his eyes, Jason gently stroked his little paw. "Hey, little buddy," he whispered. I didn't let you down, did I? Jason's sacrifice touched everyone in the clinic. This dog is alive because of you, said Dr. Lilly. But Jason shook his head from side to side. No, he said in a quiet voice. He's not alive because of me. Maybe it's because of him that I'm remembering things again. Jason agreed to keep the dog at the clinic for a few more days. But that little encounter was the beginning for him. The next day, even though his manager offered the media a chance to publicize the incident, Jason decided to keep it quiet. This dog is not show material, he said. Before leaving the clinic, Jason paid for all of the dog's care. He also made a donation to Dr. Lilly's clinic so she could help other animals. It was a sign of change in Jason. Jason Statham spent the morning in the small but warm room of his veterinary clinic, and as the light slowly dawned outside, the calls and texts on his phone were non-stop. His manager, journalists, promoters, they all asked the same thing. Jason, why didn't you come to the event? Jason didn't answer any of these messages. The only thing that mattered to him that night was that the little dog survived. But the media had already noticed. The charity event that the famous actor did not attend that night made the headlines of the tabloid world. Jason Statham broke his promise. Hero actor missed his own event. Headlines began circulating on social media. While people tried to understand the reason for this situation, some criticized. He didn't even show up at the charity event and it's not even clear where he is, wrote one social media user. Another was harsher. Someone calling on the public to help. Why is he absent? Disappointing? Jason tried to ignore the criticism, but at his manager's urging, he couldn't resist reading a few messages. Along with the criticism, there was also support. One fan said, maybe he's doing something more important than we think. Jason always does the right thing. That put a little smile on Jason's face, because he really felt that he was doing the right thing. But the criticism continued to mount. The tabloids, the organizers of the event and even some celebrities talked about Jason's absence. One of the organizers said, "We are sad that Jason is not here. This event would have been stronger with his name," said one of the organizers, expressing his disappointment. Despite all the pressure, Jason did not want to explain his good deed. His fight to save the dog was simply an answer to his own conscience. Instead of making a statement to the media or his fans, he chose to stay with the puppy. One morning, before leaving the clinic, Dr. Lilly approached Jason and said, "The dog is fine, but I have to tell you, this is a very special thing you're doing." Jason shook his head with a tired but peaceful expression on his face. "It's nothing special," he replied. It was something that needed to be done. In the days that followed, Jason adopted the dog. He named him Buddy. When Buddy first arrived at Jason's home, he seemed a little scared and timid. But over time, thanks to Jason's patient and compassionate approach, he came into his own. Buddy became a part of Jason's life, and spending time with him made Jason forget the stress of his work life. The media still wondered where Jason was that night. Several tabloids tried to investigate the situation with stories titled Jason Statham's Silent Night. But Jason made no statement. He chose to remain silent because saving Buddy was more important to him than the spotlight and criticism. One day, one of the leaders of the organization asked Jason to make a statement to break his silence. But Jason said, "I don't want any media coverage of what I'm doing. If you want to inspire someone, tell them about the importance of helping people directly." Those words silenced the organizer. Although Jason's stance drew the ire of some, his fans were moved by the incident. There were hundreds of posts on social media with the hashtag #SilentHero. Many people appreciated Jason's stance, despite the rumors about his silent act of kindness. Eventually, Buddy made a full recovery and settled into his new life with Jason. One day, Jason took Buddy to a charity event. But this time, instead of going on stage, Buddy decided to stay in the audience. In that moment, Jason realized once again the value of the second chance he had given Buddy. This story was not just about saving a dog's life. For Jason Statham, it was a journey that reminded him of the true meaning of helping people and doing good without expecting anything in return.